Belgrade's supposed to be the party capital of Europe. That's what some chick said. And then I looked in like the Lonely Planet on the internet, and yeah, it's supposed to be the party capital of Europe. But like, yeah, they have these beers, these like 3-liter bottles of beers for like less than $2 freaking. So I basically brought my bottle of beer around with me all over Belgrade, did the tour, drinking it. That's kind of when I started, because I was drinking beer going around Vienna, because that was fun, because it's legal to drink beer in public in Europe, and as an American, that was a cool experience to do. And yeah, so and the girls who worked there, like every night it was a different girl, and I was the only person there the entire time except for the first night. But I wasn't really hanging out with the chicks. They were kind of addicted to the TV, just watching the TV. But they were hot. My God, every one of them was like, bam. One of them was like, whoa. Serbian chicks are fucking hot. Because they've got like, now I mentioned this in my Serbian video and it pissed some Serbians off big time. But Serbians have darker skin than the Croatians and all those other Europeans. I'm sorry, but they do. And that's what makes those chicks hot. Their skin is olive colored and it's fucking hot. And they're tall. So they're hot. This chick who was really hot in the hostel, who was working there, wasn't tall, but she was hot. Oh yeah, I was talking to some Serbian dude, and he was all like, really interested in me, talking to me. And, well, he just wants some dude asking, do a survey, working in the streets or something like that. But, and then, well, I stayed the 4th night there because it was the full moon, and I wanted to try to do a 24-hour long bike ride. But I had like 4 Big Mac meals, 2 that morning and 2 the night before, and I got sick. And I also had been drinking out of water bottles that had juice stored in them for days on end and had this like black fuzz on the inside of it that I couldn't get out, and I was drinking out of that, and I got sick, and maybe that could have been why. So I rolled in, and there was this really beautiful like campground area that had cabins next to a river that was actually the border with Bosnia that I stopped at and I stayed in, had my own cabin. And like they were extremely interested in me there. They interviewed me for a newspaper. And then they gave me this huge meal for free. Delicious meal. Saying, you know, with this long note, oh, I hope your bike tour goes well. You know, please accept this as a token of Serbian hospitality. It was really nice. And it was a place where Robert De Niro had stayed for a few days, for like a week or something, back when he was like 18 hitchhiking. And like right in front of my cabin, it was like called the Robert De Niro cabin. It was written. It was kind of funny. So then I rode into Bosnia, and in one day, I think, because I don't remember camping any place in between, into Sarajevo. I went up 2 big passes, and I was up one pass, and it was kind of late. It was like 7, and I was like, oh man, it's getting kind of late. Why did I get started so late? I don't have to ride through the darkness. I wanted to make it to Sarajevo today. And it went down, and it was downhill, 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 downhill. 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, I was in Sarajevo. Downhill all the way to Sarajevo. Right when I entered Sarajevo through the tunnel, boom, there's historical downtown center of Sarajevo. So Sarajevo is like the capital, but it's kind of like you can get the impression it's a tiny little town. Because it's like you're nowhere land, you go through a tunnel, boom, you're in the center of downtown central Sarajevo. I tried to look at the tunnel, but I didn't. They were under siege for 4 years back in '97 by the Serbian Bosnians, shelling them for 4 years, and the only way to get supplies was through this tiny little tunnel. That if you stood up, you'd get electrocuted to death because the electricity came through there too. And I don't know how they were managed to keep that tunnel active with the Bosnians, or the Serbian Bosnians shelling them, but I didn't get to see it. I looked out and I couldn't find it. And nobody around could find it and knew where it was, so finally I just, asked these military people, some hot butch chick with a machine gun. With all these other guys was like, oh, I don't know. So, but I was there 3 nights. Because one day I stayed there the entire day watching all the episodes of Pacific at the computer place. I took another little vacation from my vacation. 4 nights, unnecessary nights in Belgrade, and then 3 in Sarajevo. And then I rode out south from Sarajevo. Sarajevo is a small town, and it had bullet holes all over the buildings, which is really interesting. And it's not a big city. But I rode out just south of Sarajevo, beautiful. Lots of hills, go over a pass, you know, river, pristine forest, really pretty. And then I went down, and I rode, that day was amazing. I rode all the way through this tiny little road up and down through a river, over this bridge, through all these tunnels. And then it started raining cats and dogs when I rolled into this town, and I was tired because it was like a 10.5 hour day. It was like my first day that was really long. It was like my first day where I actually started reasonably early. Until then, I'd been starting at like 10:30 or something. And I got there, and so I got a hotel. How much was it? I don't know, $35 or something. But the guy working at the hotels were really grumpy. And that was in Montenegro. So my first experience with Montenegro was like, oh, you grumpy people? What? So then the next day I rode in, because I tried to go to the capital city that day, but I didn't make it because it was, I don't know, didn't have the time. So I was only like 15 miles outside of it. Rode down a hill, boom, I was in the capital city of called Podgorica. Beautiful city. But it's not a city, it's a town. Capital city. No street signs anywhere though. I looked and looked and looked, and it's like, how the hell do you guys navigate? Do you just memorize? It's just like, oh yeah, go over to the street behind the black building or something, you know. But I stayed at a hostel, and they have a nice, you know, river going through, pristine looking river. And nice looking mountains over there. Pretty city. And it's not on the ocean, but I didn't see the ocean. But I stayed at a hostel run by an American guy. Reminds me, he wanted me to write him because I put him, or tell him about my video, because he was in my video talking a little bit. But I stayed in his hostel. He had an interesting hostel because it was this guy, he was like a 60-year-old guy with like a 20-year-old English girlfriend, who was like Indian blood or something. But they, it was like big room. It was like it was a 2-bedroom room, 2-bedroom apartment. And one of the rooms just had like mattresses, well, I slept on a bed, but a few people were just sleeping on like foam mattresses and stuff. No bunk beds, just sprawled out. And there was like 6 of us in there. Like a really like scrapes together hostel, you know. And when I asked him how much it was, he didn't even know how much. He was like, how much am I charging? 10, 12, I don't know. I guess 10, since I said maybe 10. How much is that on the website? And I was like, website says 12. Oh, really? Well, I said 10. Ah, whatever, 10. So it's kind of funny. But I guess it was kind of the beginning of high season because there were lots of people there. But and then I got up next day. I rode up over the mountains. Oh man, mountains, man. Montenegro is beautiful. Mountains everywhere. Mountains, 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 jam-packed. Up, down, up, down. It was through the rainstorm too, and I was really cold. Even with all my clothes on, my feet and my hands were freezing. Especially my feet. That was like the coldest day I ever had. But I went down some river and I was going to go into Kosovo, and you know, even though my map said that was a road, no more border crossings when I got there, so I had to backtrack 20 kilometers. So I think I rode like 40 kilometers too much. But you know, Montenegrins, they're really cool. There was like little Montenegrin kids, and they're really smart. They were like really interested in me, talking, you know, could speak English, and they were like pointing me, trying to get me to go to a restaurant, trying to tell me it was really nice, and then telling me where the next town was, and talking like they were adults, and they were like 10, so it was like pretty smart kids. Montenegro, Podgorica was really pretty. I mean, Montenegrins are beautiful people. Really tall, really fit, probably like the fittest I've ever seen. Jacked. Guys are jacked, women are jacked. At 6 o'clock at night, they close off the road, and it's all pedestrian. There's some chick on rollerblades going back and forth. Joo, 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 joo. I wanted to film her. Oh, and one chick, my God. I went to some restaurant area, like a Subway, where they sell like, you know, drinks and ice cream and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah. Give me the sandwich. It was like a foot-long sandwich. And I was like, yeah, give me the basic sandwich, right? It was supposed to be a sandwich with like a slice of cheese. And she's like, okay, well, what do you want on your basic sandwich? And I was like, oh. Because the basic sandwich was like a foot-long sandwich that was like $1. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that. I ended up having everything. So it was like a foot-long, like a Subway sandwich. And it was $1. She's like, okay, that'll be $1. I was like, oh my God, what? Thanks for hooking me up or whatever. So So, yeah, anyway, so then I rode into Kosovo. I went over this big pass, big mountain, and then down, all the way down, huge down. That was the highest point of my entire trip. It was 5,960 feet. Oh, the thing's still melting, leaking. And then I went into a valley, or not a valley, I went into the flat area. So Montenegro's mountains, Kosovo's the flat part. Rode across, went over a little bit, the little thing, and then, you know, the roads are okay. But then I see there's some kid. There's two kids. See, Kosovo's a poor place. They're poor there. Serbia's poor. Serbia's cheap, dude. But not as poor as Kosovo. Well, Kosovo is having a war. And so maybe that's why, like, the roads were fucked up. But anyway, I see this, like, kid, like, 15-year-old kid, riding on this ratty-ass mountain bike with his buddy. And he's going fast. And he's, like, racing me. And he's looking back at me and, like, going fast, looking back at me. He's going, like, 25 miles an hour. And, like, me, I guess I have, like, a racer mentality or something. And I kind of was, like, keeping pace with him. And I was going way faster than I should have. Because next thing I know, I'm right behind cars. And I'm in a fucking... All of a sudden, I'm in a pothole minefield. And I'm having to bunny hop over pothole after pothole. And it was too many. And boom! I hit a rock. I hit a pothole on my rear wheel. Got a flat. Fucked up my wheel. I still have to figure out what I'm going to do about my wheel. My carbon fiber wheel, man. Fucked it up. Anyway, see, I arrived in Europe with 2 pumps, and then I lost a pump. So then I bought another pump, but then I lost that pump. So I still only had 1 pump. So then I tried to pump up my bike with that pump, but the pump didn't work. So I was like, fuck. So I couldn't ride. But these kids who I was racing, fucking kids, when I pulled over to try to fix my wheel, they turned around and they're like looking at me. They're just standing there like looking at me. Because they didn't speak in English for like a half hour as I'm trying to fix it. And then I get on my bike and they follow me. And then I go to some like mechanic and the guy's, you know, is English. And he's like, oh yeah, my brother's in America or whatever. And he pumps up my bike. But he has this like piece of rubber to use a car pump or something. Or really like Jimmy rigged a way to pump up my tire. But he can only pump it up a little bit. So it was and from there on in all the way into Pristina, Kosovo, I had to ride across dirt roads with potholes. So I had to ride really slowly, like less than 10 miles an hour, 5-10 miles an hour, with all of my weight on the horns, with my backpack on, right, so that the weight would be on my hand and not on the back of my bike, with as little weight on the rear wheel as possible, so I don't get a snake skin again, snake flat. But these kids were like keeping pace with me. They were like. And at some points I could ride fast, and I was riding fast, and this one kid was strong. Like, he was talented. He could have been a good bike racer, because he was, like, keeping up with me, you know. But then, like, they turned off, and they invited me for a drink, but I was like, no, thanks, I got to get into this town before I get stuck. I got into Pristina. Pristina was, like, Pristina's a trip, because Pristina, loaded with people. So many people, man. It's a really young city, but tons of people, man. It's like, and really vibrant, really happy, smiley people. I mean, the Kosovars are really excited about having their own country now. And I didn't know shit about Kosovo. I don't know anything about Kosovo. When I went there, and I learned a lot when I was there, I had a great time when I was in Kosovo, thanks to this German kid named Hagen. Because I ride in, and I asked him where the main Central Mall is. See, whenever I ride my bike into a town, I ask where the Central Mall is. Because I can go to the central town and then I go, okay, cool. Now I can orientate myself from where the center of the city is, the Central Plaza. Well, in South America, it's the Central Plaza. In Europe, it's the Central Pedestrian area. So, anyway, I asked some I asked some Kosovar. I'm like, yo, you know, I think it was a hostel I was looking for. Do you know where this road or this hostel is? And some, like, dude turns around and he's like, what? And he runs back to me. He's like, hey, I'm German. What's up? I'm Hagen here. I'll show you. I know where that is. Yeah. And he's like, really friendly guy, like, you know, and he's this total networker dude. Like, he brings me this hostel, which is a really interesting hostel because I don't know, it's just,